This is the 2023 ASUS Vivobook Pro 16 OLED version. This is a 16-inch laptop. It's kind of a hybrid type device, definitely leaning more towards creative types, graphic designers, content creators, whatever, because it does have a beautiful, beautiful OLED screen on it. This features 120 Hertz Pantone validated OLED screen. ASUS has been making really nice OLED laptops for a long time. It's kind of one of their specialties, making those creative style OLED laptops. If you look at some of their Pro Art OLED laptops, they can be very, very expensive. This one here is their Vivobook lineup, which is meant to be significantly more budget. This year, though, it is pretty expensive. I definitely wouldn't call this a budget laptop by any means, at least in terms of price. Partially, that's due to the fact that it has NVIDIA graphics. This here has a 4060 inside and an Intel i9 13900H. So it has very impressive specs in the laptop. If you're looking for a larger laptop, 16-inch screen, there are a few quirks with this laptop. It's certainly not a perfect laptop. You'll see as I go through the video when I get into it. There's a couple things you may see here and there where I'm a little bit down on it. However, I think it is a very compelling laptop overall. The price right now is a bit much. I think the MSRP is a little bit out there for what it is. But as we move a little bit further into the lifespan of these NVIDIA graphics, we may find that these laptops come down in price. And this laptop here, if it drops down 25, 30% off the MSRP, then it starts to become a very compelling price for a buyer who's looking for a very good, powerful laptop, hybrid type design, but has a just absolutely outstanding screen on it as well. Here's the charger here. We can see it's 150 watts. It's a barrel style charger. You can see that there. So barrel style charging. Okay, and here's a look at the laptop here. We can see 16-inch, so it's not a small laptop by any means. It's also not a huge, gaming laptop or anything like that. So we have a metal lid there. I think that's a metal lid. Yeah, that's a metal lid there. So we have some metal on it at least. Not too bad. Not super thick or anything like that. If you're looking for a 16-inch laptop, that's not gigantic, also not super thin or anything like that. It's certainly not a thick laptop by any means there. You can see it's kind of as thick as, some of the other ASUS laptops, the Lenovo Legions and that. The slim style laptops there with the dedicated graphics. Plastic bottom. So that's just a plastic bottom, but it does have a metal lid. So the laptop itself is about just shy of 2,000 grams. So just shy of 2 kilograms. So that's pretty heavy actually. And it feels heavy, but it feels sturdy, but it's definitely fairly heavy. We'll add that on there. 412 grams. So we have both of them going at the same time. Yeah, we're at 23.53. That's around 5 pounds or so. That's fairly heavy for a laptop. But again, it's a 16-inch laptop with dedicated graphics, but it's not going to be as light as some of the other slim laptops with dedicated graphics. Left side here, we have a micro SD card reader, microphone, headphone combo jack there, and then we have a USB-A port, just one. So there's only one port on the side for data, and then you get your SD card and your headphones. Back has nothing at all. Right side is where the majority of your ports are. So you get your barrel plug input, you get a full RJ45 Ethernet port, HDMI there, another USB-A and 2 USB-C. So you get 2 USB-C, 2 USB-A, HDMI, RJ45, and an SD card. Ventilation is nothing on the right side here at all. A little bit on the left side there. You'll be able to see near the screen out the back. So it looks like other Vivobooks. I've reviewed a 14-inch Vivobook from last year. It looks basically the same, it's just bigger. And nice looking laptops overall. It's kind of has more of a businessy look to it. But yeah, you can see there, pretty unassuming, nice matte kind of gray. Not brutal for fingerprints, I've noticed on this. It's the same as last year. So you can see there you get that kind of temperature mark, but it doesn't leave. Up here we get our camera kill switch. So it's not BIOS, it's just actual physical kill switch. And it looks like there's an IR blaster there for facial unlock. That's good. And that's that. And then you get your heat that actually comes out here, which is weird. So it's very thin, might be hard to see. See if I can get it on camera. You can see that there. So the heat comes out here into the hinge here for the screen, and then you get some out the left there. So I actually suspect this is gonna run pretty warm, to be honest, just based on that. Okay, easy enough to get into. You can see there, plastic bottom there. A lot of support brackets on the fan there. Just basically support all over the place because it's plastic, so it's not going to be super structurally sound or anything like that. Interestingly, they put a lot of structural pieces in here in this laptop, which also will work as a heatsink too. Battery wise, we have a nice big battery here. So you can see 96 watt hour battery. That's a huge battery, only 4 watts off from the legal limit. So we should get okay battery life out of this, despite the fact that it has i9 and it has a dedicated graphics there. That'll give us decent battery life. Speakers are down firing right there towards you, which is actually kind of nice. They look pretty actually robust for speakers. It'll be coming out of the front of the laptop here. You can see there's those grills right there, and it'll be hitting this table in front of you and bouncing into you basically. So I suspect those should hopefully sound pretty good. They at least will be fairly directional. Upgradability, we do have 2 NVMe slots. The first one here is under this metal kind of support bracket here. So you'd have to take this whole metal bracket off. Basically, just a few screws. Take this off. There's an NVMe under there. The second NVMe is actually under here. You may not be able to see, but that's the actual slot right there. And so you might be able to actually stick one in there without removing anything, I think. Yeah, you should be fine there. Basically just slide one in. You may not even have to take that off. RAM here is obviously partially soldered, and then we also have the stick here. We have an 8GB SODIMM stick here, which you can upgrade, so you could put in a 16, for example, potentially a 32, and the rest of it is actually soldered to the motherboard here. So you're going to be a bit limited in terms of the RAM upgrades, but at least there is some RAM upgradability here. It's just going to come down to if you match them up, then you're going to be in dual channel or single channel. So, the RAM there is partially soldered, partially SODIMM. Intel Wi-Fi AX211, so we have upgradable Wi-Fi there if you want to switch that out. That's good Wi-Fi though, so you should be fine. And then we have our heat sink and cooling here. Definitely not robust, kind of at all. So we're going to have a CPU and GPU under one of these. I'm not sure which is which. It's a decent enough fan. You can see there it has pretty good fin density, and there's 2 of them, and they look like they'd probably move some decent air overall. However, we do just have 2 heat pipes for both of the components. One of them is just this tiny little one right here, and then we have a single heat pipe coming off to the left here. So yeah, I mean, it's going to run pretty spicy. This has an i9 13900H in it, which is not a cool CPU by any means. The 4060 in here will run relatively cool on its own. So, we're going to be basically probably getting a pretty spicy CPU, I would guess here. But I do suspect some thermal throttling on this CPU here. We'll see when we do some benchmarks on that. But so for the purpose of this review, I actually brought in my ThinkBook over here. This is a brand new ThinkBook lineup. This is the ThinkBook 16P, just so we can do a comparison here. So, the biggest issue here, I mean, they're both very similar in some ways. Dual NVMe. This one has a 2242, which is kind of dumb, but whatever. Dual SODIMM here, which is awesome. This one has single, so that's a bit limiting. But the biggest issue here is the cooling. You can see that there. This is not a gaming laptop. The ThinkBook is not a gaming laptop. This is a business laptop. They're both business laptops. This is not a Lenovo Legion or anything like that. This is not one of their gaming lineup, although you can game on it, obviously. This one has a 13900H, 13900H, RTX 4060, RTX 4060, and look at the difference in the cooling there, right? It's going to make a big difference when it comes down to it and you start actually gaming on this device here. When you start doing some heavy demanding tasks, programming, video editing and that, you're going to get what I suspect you're going to get a lot more thermal throttling on this model here than the ThinkBook over here. So the reason I'm comparing these is they're also the exact same price. I paid the exact same price for these 2 laptops. I paid 1,800 Canadian dollars. I paid 1,800 Canadian dollars. They were both on sale to get to that point, but the base MSRP from what I've seen regularly is basically the same. So that's going to make a difference here. If you're not paying any more, which one are you going to pick? Okay, here's a look at MyASUS. MyASUS is basically one of their, it's like a management tool. So you can do things like warranty. You can actually speak to chat in here. You can, go through chat. So it's kind of a neat program in that way. It's kind of bloaty, but it actually is useful. You can talk to support in that here. Looks like we have some OLED control stuff in here. This is an OLED screen, obviously. So pixel shift will basically move the pixels ever so slightly, and it will help with not getting burn in. There's, transparency effect that too. You can hide the taskbar, which will basically get rid of that, and that'll help prevent the taskbar from basically burning in on your OLED. So that's a good feature to have. I will turn it off for now, but this is important stuff. You want to have those turned on, basically. Okay, we'll have a look at the screen here. It's obviously a nice, beautiful OLED screen here. It actually looks worse on camera. It's gonna have a hard time showing it off, but I mean, it's gonna be reflective. It's not super like hyper reflective, but it is reflective. You can see even me there, even on color, you can kind of see me there. It's a glossy screen. It's not touchscreen or anything like that, but it's just a glossy OLED. OLEDs, I've seen non-glossy and I've seen glossy. Glossy screens pop more in terms of color. So we can see here, it's a very high resolution screen here, 3200 by 200 resolution. Awesome screen there in terms of the resolution. And if we come down here, we're going to get our refresh rate, 120 hertz. You can flip between 120 and 60 depending on your battery life. That's the main selling feature here, is a really nice screen. 120 hertz refresh rate OLED screen basically is what you're getting here. So, okay, let's have a look at the screen here. I'm actually zoomed out a little bit because otherwise it freaks out when I'm just zoomed right in there. You just can't handle it. Beautiful contrast you can see there. It's an OLED screen, so the blacks are going to be absolute blacks. Very nice. You can see a little bit of reflectivity. It's more dramatic on the camera than it is in person. Beautiful, vibrant reds. 120 hertz is nice too. You're not going to notice it on YouTube, but you know, on desktop purposes, you'll see it. Very vibrant blues. It's more pronounced in person. It's a little muted here, but that looks great. Beautiful overall. Yeah, so I mean, it's a beautiful screen. It's 120 hertz refresh rate, high resolution OLED screen with good color accuracy and good color range and well calibrated. So it's going to be a beautiful viewing experience. If you're doing professional graphic design work, content creation where color matters, you're going to not go wrong with this screen. It's beautiful to look at. But even just media consumption, like looking at the screen, it is a very, very nice screen. So it certainly gets loud. Yeah, so the speakers are good. It doesn't have that very low end bass that's a lot of laptops lack. I would overall give this, it has good speakers though overall. You know, you're not going to be listening to tons of bass on it or anything like that, but I would definitely say it sounds quite nice. Let's have a look at the trackpad and the keyboard. I actually like these Vivobook keyboards. I've always found them kind of nice. I had the Vivobook 14X from last year, and it was really nice to type on. It's you know, pretty standard layout. On the 16-inch model here, you get a numpad. It's not separated very much, but I mean, you're probably, you know, you're going to be using this probably not quite as much, but it's nice to have a dedicated numpad over here. I just really like the Vivobook keyboard. I'll do a quick type here. Yeah, I mean, I love this keyboard. It's so snappy. It's just simple. It's like has big keys. They don't look ugly. The contrast is nice. When you actually are typing on them, they're nice and snappy. The trackpad is nice and large here. It's not a glass trackpad or anything like that, but it does feel smooth, whereas this has, you know, a fairly smooth texture. This has a very smooth texture. Some plastic trackpads kind of feel like, I don't know, plasticky and texturized. This one doesn't. It's nice and smooth. And ASUS has excellent trackpads. They just feel very precise. I always like ASUS trackpads. They feel nice. Good size. Nice click on it too. I'm not even doing some Windows updates here. I'm just installing Game Pass, apparently. Not even a game, just Game Pass. And it's pretty noisy here. Yeah, you can see there. That kind of tiny little bit of cooling it has there. It's going to struggle to keep that i9 cool. The 4060 isn't super hot, but that i9 can get pretty spicy. You know, it's an H model, but even so, I mean, it's an i9. So, yeah, you're going to have fans, basically. Running some Time Spy here. And here's a look at some benchmark scores. You can see here that in Cinebench, we're getting a score of approximately 14,274. That's actually not the best score for a 13900H. Lenovo Legions that I've tested in the past and some other laptops like the ASUS X16 actually got higher scores, but obviously we're getting some thermal constraint here. And you can see that on the temperatures over here, we are getting thermal throttling. It's not constantly setting at a thermal throttling rate, but it is throttling from time to time. Here's a look at the RAM speed. It runs at 4800 megahertz. So while the 13900H is capable of running at 5200 megahertz, this is a little bit slower running at 4800 megahertz, but it is DDR5 memory. And then we can see here that the SSD runs at a Gen 4 speed, not blazingly fast, but reasonably fast. 4,700 megabytes per second reads and approximately 3,500 for writes there, so not too bad. It's a Micron 2400 drive. And then you can see here I did some 3D Mark runs here, and you can see here that we're getting thermal throttling. We're only getting a score of about 13,242. So clearly it is hitting some type of thermal throttling on that GPU, on the CPU, and that's because it doesn't have the best heatsink. Then the GPU is not hitting thermal throttling here, so we are getting pretty good scores, but it is shared cooling, unfortunately, across the system. And then you can see here I'm just doing some updates, and you can see that even when just doing Windows updates, there is actually some pretty considerable thermal throttling on the CPU here. So again, it does have a 13900H, which is a very powerful CPU, but the cooling is obviously underperforming as we anticipated. Just it's not as beefed up as some other devices, such as the ASUS X13. Okay, and here's a test of the built-in webcam. You can see here looks pretty good, actually. I actually don't have a ton of light coming in my front. It's starting to get a little bit later in the afternoon here. There's a little bit of light, but most of it's just coming from above. So it actually looks pretty good, and the polling rate is good. We'll see how the mic sounds, but I'd say this is a pretty nice webcam. Okay, we're doing some game testing here. Let's just check the sound to start here. It's pretty loud. Game's turned up quite a bit. So 58 or up to 60. So the screen looks fantastic. That OLED screen looks absolutely gorgeous. So whatever you say about performance, noise, thermals, whatever, the screen looks quite nice. So Ultra is going to be below 60, but still good. Right? It's a very powerful CPU, and the GPU, interestingly, the 4060, the nice thing about it is it does scale very well at low wattages. So, you know, it's only pulling 55 to 60 watts, but that's actually fine because the 4060 does so well at low watts. You don't need to crank it up to, you know, 85, 90, 100, 110 watts to get the performance. Pretty close. So that's quality DLSS. It's just shy of 60. The computer is rather loud, that's one thing, but you get the performance there. So CPU, well, CPU is hot, yeah. Max there. Looks like we're getting pretty warm temperatures on this CPU at a max, but it's not, you know, just sitting at a super high temperature. So this is balanced DLSS now. This is going to give you your 60. And again, this is a high resolution screen, 3.2K, so there's no problems with throwing on a little bit more DLSS because it's still going to look great. There's a lot of data to upscale. So, but yeah. So medium, native. I mean, it's getting 30. It's better than I thought, to be honest, but challenging scene here, and we're around 30 actually, so it's not bad. It looks great. Let's go back up here. An extra 5 FPS or whatever, so let's go with balanced, see what we get in balanced here. Yeah, so balanced on medium is going to get you your 60 FPS. Up there. Let's see what we get down here. I still suspect it'll be around 60. Yeah, 36 on average or so at that 3.2K. The game is well optimized, so your probably best bet is to just decrease the resolution or use scaling, because changing the settings won't have a massive difference. It will, but it's not going to be absolutely game changing. The game is just well optimized, so you turn up the settings and it still runs well, but that's running pretty well right there overall. We'll go with FSR, at least it's 2. See what that does for us. Yeah, gigantic jump in performance. So again, you're at such a high resolution, I would just throw in some DLSS, even just quality. And look at that performance jump, right? Still shy of 60, but it's good. We're getting almost 50. But regardless, it's going to be very playable, as you can see here. Noisy again, but very playable, right? Yep, kind of as anticipated. It's going to struggle a bit at 3.2K. This will give us our baseline, though. Still playable, but I mean, you might as well just... So let's throw on some quality DLSS here to start. See if we can get a little bit more stability. Yeah, so quality DLSS, pretty big jump. Still a huge drop when we move a lot. This is a very demanding area, though. The 4060 is pulling only 50 watts, but it's trying. This is a really nice laptop that we have here. There's a couple of quirks with it. If you're looking for a beautiful, beautiful screen on a laptop, this one's going to be hard to beat. It's an OLED screen. It's not just that it's an OLED screen, it's a 120 hertz OLED screen, so it's a high refresh rate. It's very bright, very, very bright, and it has beautiful colors as well. It is glossy, so you're going to get a lot of reflectivity. Great for even gaming. When I was playing games, they just really popped off the screen. But of course, if you're a content creator or if you're a graphic designer or something like that, you're going to love the screen. It's beautiful, it's bright, it's vivid. The camera doesn't do it justice. It looks way better. ASUS has been making great OLED screens for years now. Nothing has changed. They're just doing a good job with that. Keyboard is awesome to type on. It's actually a pleasure to type on this keyboard. I love the Vivobook keyboard more than any other ASUS keyboard that they make. I like the Vivobook keyboards the most. There's a couple weird things that I don't like as much about it. I mean, it is slightly lower wattage. It's not a big deal, but you're never going to, 4060, you're not going to be able to truly push it to its limits. If you compare this, for example, to a Lenovo Legion, those, when they're in silent mode, they'll run the same amount of wattage as the GPU here. You know, the 4060 will run at around 65-ish watts, somewhere around there. And on the Lenovo Legions, in silent mode, they're silent, like very quiet. There's no fans really at all. They might kick in, but you can't hear them. This thing is absolutely blazingly loud when you're playing games. And that's due to the fact that it doesn't have very good cooling inside. You know, the benchmarks are not great when the CPU is being taxed, but it does keep the GPU cool. And when you're playing games, I mean, you're usually more GPU focused. So generally speaking, the gaming performance is quite good, to be honest, on this laptop. 30, 40, it's not 100 watt 4060, but for the wattage it gives you, it runs really well. It's super loud due to that inadequate cooling. You know, I think build quality is pretty good overall. You know, the Vivobooks have been okay over the years, but the only negative I would say is that cooling. So if you're looking for, you know, if you're going to be gaming on this thing all the time, it is an OLED, which is nice and it's beautiful to play on, but you know, there are other gaming laptops. But if you're looking for a really nice hybrid device, you know, if you're a creative type, you want that beautiful, beautiful screen there. You want to be able to use the 4060 for accelerating that type of workflow. You're going to love this laptop. If you're the type who's more of a hybrid user like me, who will be doing a lot of creative type stuff, but also gaming on the laptop, you're going to be able to do that on this laptop. It is a little loud, but the performance is quite good. Price-wise, it's a little much for me. I mean, yeah, it's an OLED, and it's a nice OLED, but this thing's coming in at a really high price, despite the fact that, you know, it has a lot of plastic involved with it, and the cooling is not great. You know, it's an i9, that's nice. It's a 4060, that's nice. But you're paying a lot of money to buy into the OLED, the ASUS OLED